Hello and welcome to the last ever episode of Net That Haul with the branding and the theme tune. I am, of course, FPL Nima. I'm joined by my co-host today, man on pod, Craig. How are you, Craig? Good to have you back after, I think it's 70 days since the Game Week 38 video we were all on together.
I feel quite privileged. Last ever episode, I don't feel worthy of such an occasion. At least we come with our commiserations, black baseball caps on to signify the magnitude of what this is.
Yeah, we're both here mourning.
Day.
It's a sad, sad day. So if you're joining us and you've not seen the news, the main thing is this is obviously a launch party for the new 24-25 FPL season. I'm going to tell you a bit more about the schedule going forwards. As of next week, we will be relaunching the channel going forwards every Wednesday, typically for about an hour from 6 p.m. UK time. We're going to have a rotating roster of guests, have a laugh, very casual, informal look at the key topics of that week. It'll be more of a fireside chat kind of vibe. So I'm glad to be here with Craig, who obviously I've been with on Net That Haul many times last season. So big thank you before we get started to obviously Chris, FPL Mariner, and Gabriel at FPL Lens, the co-founders of Net That Haul, and 4 seasons together, ultimately leading in the Gold Award at the FCAs. So thank you everyone in the community who voted for us, who supported us and got us there. We really lived the dream through this community. But now today will be the end of the haulers. So we're just going to look at kind of our first impressions of the new game, couple of our top tips and rules that we have personally for our own play styles going forwards, and then look at the kind of the first 5 game weeks fixture wise, top goal scorer predictions, and take questions. We're probably going to be out of here by about 9:30 p.m. unless you guys ask a lot of questions at the end. But as always, we will start the questions and answer them when we get there. But I think without further ado, Craig, as we kind of welcome everyone in the chat, we'll get the shout outs going as well. Thank you to anyone who's come from FPL Juice. So thank you to the Juice family who have sent everyone through the redirect at the end of their show. Really appreciate James, obviously, from Launchpod. What a guy, a legend. So without further ado, let's look at the changes, our first impressions, Craig. I'll let you take it away. I've put the new changes today from FPL Challenge as well, if that's your kind of thing. But yeah, well, what are your thoughts? What's your favorite change, I suppose?
The different reasons to many. I think that the free transfer move benefits me. So I guess I have to view that as a positive change because I have played Sky for quite a long time. I've got used to the sort of the way you play that game and the way you do well at that game, and a lot of it is caution and making the right opportunities to make big transfers because you've got such a limited amount. And there are many times in FPL where I feel like managers make a transfer because they feel like they have to. And there was occasions last year when I had 2 free transfers and I didn't really want to use one because you had to, or you lost it, you used one. And I think there'll be very tactical ways to play these transfers now, adds a new dimension to the game. And I think just because we played Sky and I'm used to, at times in Sky, making 4 transfers at once, so that novelty won't be there for me like it will be for a lot of other people. I think a lot of people will see 3 transfers, 4 transfers and think, well, this is exciting, rub their hands together and want to use them all. But for me, I don't have that. It's a bit like, I don't know if it was like for you, Nima, if you go, like when people go to university and they live maybe in a small town or a small village somewhere. So when they go to a big town and a big city and then they get to go out to all these big nightclubs and all that, it's a big shock to the system for them. I had people like that at my university with me that spent the first 6 months of university like basically just going out all the time because it was new. Where I grew up, I had that through college a little bit, so the novelty wasn't there for me. So I maybe studied a bit better than them or did other things differently to them at uni because I didn't have the same experience as them. Where here, I kind of feel it's a bit similar for me. So I think a lot of people will change the way they play, probably for the worse because of this transfer situation. And hopefully because it's not so new to me, that I can sort of take advantage of that and use it to my advantage over them. So I'm probably quite looking forward to not necessarily having 5 free transfers, just the new tactical ways to play this and the changes and the different styles now and different strategies around it. I think that will suit me the way I play more than some others. So it's a good one for me, that one.
And RIP to Sky Fantasy as well with that news. I know FF stuff are trying to rebuild it using Telegraph as a base scoring system and then some custom coding, but it's all very last minute. So fair play to them. Good job if you're interested in Sky. go check out what they're doing. But controversially, I'll talk about my least favorite new thing, which is the mystery chip. I just don't understand how I can like plan ahead. I'm a planner. I love chips. I love chip strategy. That's where I'd like to think I get my edge most FPL seasons. And not knowing what one of those chips will be and if it would make me change how I would use the other ones really does have a bit of a negative impact on my mind going in. So I hope it's kind of like a one-off thing where you can only use it in a specific time period, and you can't. It's not like a new thing that's like a long-term strategy. But in terms of the new changes today, these are actually the challenge mode, and I really want to say those are my favorites so far because I didn't find much reason to keep going back to it. So now I'm going to make a league for this new channel, obviously, as we refresh the branding next week. And let me know in the chat if you're interested. We can do like a challenge league because you can keep the score for the full season long now, Craig. And obviously, before it felt a bit pointless because every game week it would reset, and then I wouldn't know how I'm doing against you guys in the mini league over time. It would just always be game week specific. So I'm glad they've made that change at least. Don't know if you saw that news today.
I didn't, and I never played it last year. I'm not completely convinced I'll play it this year either, to be fair. It's just one more game to try and commit to each week, and I already do a few different versions of FPL. I've got an account where I'm in a league where you have to keep 30 million in the bank at all times. So obviously you don't get no Haaland, no Salah, no players like that. You have to pick from the weaker teams. I quite enjoy playing that. So I'm in a league. There's about 50 of us that play that. So I do that. I play FPL. I'm gonna give fan team and stuff a go this year as well with no Sky. So I feel like 3 games is probably enough for me without having to focus on challenge, which is maybe a different strategy and stuff as well. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll be persuaded to play, but at the moment I've got no intention to play.
It is a lot of thinking. I think what I like is the first few game weeks at least. It's like a 5-a-side format, so I don't need to like go and pick like a full squad. So it feels a bit more manageable. But I'm not sure if it will revert back to 11 players after the first 4 in this set in the screenshot. So yeah, let's keep going. I think we'll go into the FPL side of things for this season. I'd love to see kind of we've both put 2 things down on paper that are our kind of rules or ways of playing. I'll let you go first and let our viewers know kind of, Craig, what kind of some of your rules of thumb, I guess, when you play FPL. And maybe tell people, anyone who's not come across Craig before on his pod, Man on Pod, do let us know kind of how many seasons maybe you've been playing and what kind of manager play style you consider yourself.
I've been playing far too long, since about 2008, I think. So I think just when I finished uni, so I'm one of the old fogies, if you want to call it that, that played for ages. Yeah, I've been doing Man on Pod a few years with Darren and Martin, and this rules pod or these rules are quite interesting because we make them at the start of every season. We do a whole pod dedicated to this. So the top one of the 2 on the screen at the moment is one of the ones from last year, and despite obviously the game being a bit different this year, I will stick to it again. Flexibility is quite helpful early on, and I'm sure my draft will have minimal players at the same price point. Is a possibility I might have 2 4.5 million defenders because I think there's value there this year. But at the other price points, I don't really see myself having multiple players. I'll use it. The 2 players I'm quite keen to start with at the moment are Bruno Fernandes and Eze, because I'm not sure exactly what 6.5 million midfielder I want. So starting with Eze, who we know is on penalties, we know is on set pieces, generally involved in most of the good that Crystal Palace do. Start with him at 7 million when one of the 6.5 million mids obviously starts really well and puts themselves above the others. It was in Waymo last year at that price point, wasn't it? It started better than others. I've got the budget obviously to then make that downgrade move to him. And I think I'm a bit the same with Bruno Fernandes. He's got a decent first fixture. From the minimal I've taken in around the way the bonus points have changed, he seems to benefit from that. So it's not a bad thing for him to have that. And so I think he's quite a nice price at 8.5 million that you can downgrade again to a Gordon or a Bowen or whoever else is going to take off at that price point. So you've got 2 nice downgrades there. That frees up then money to, if you want to move to a Trent or a Saliba or something from a cheaper defender, you can do that. So that one rule I will try and stick to again. Not too many players. I don't see the point of 4.5 million defenders, for example. I know some people will do that and it might work for them.
I've seen that, as a back free rotation, 4.5s.
Yeah, it just doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. I know there's a lot of players at that price point, and even at that price point, there's still sideways moves you can make. But it's not really for me.
Just
The
before your
second one,
second tip, actually, because talking of defenders, do you consider yourself as more of a 4.5 million defender or more of a 6-7 million defender? For anyone who's listening on podcast, obviously you won't see this photo on the show on YouTube, but there's a photo of when we were there at the Emirates and Craig plays in the back line. So what price defender would you consider yourself in
they
FPL?
priced me at they priced me at 5 million for game week 39, right, when I was playing for Team South. So I guess there was a reason for that.
Okay, so you're above
Unfortunately for
these
me, I'm quite
4.5s.
tall, so I've got decent goal threat from set pieces. But usually in most teams I play for, I'm also like the quickest defender, so I tend to stay back on the halfway line for set pieces in case there's a counter attack on from our corner. So maybe I don't go forward enough. So 5 million is probably a fair price for me. I think maybe even 4.5.
I
I'll
thought
be
we
an
were
ever
going to
present
use your
4.5.
Emirates experience to pitch you up a bit to at least a 5.5, like almost like a Pedro Porro.
No, put me down as an Israeli consul, right? They put him at 4.5. I'll be at 4.5 with him. Sounds
Okay, so
fair
you're going
enough.
to go down. You're going. I guess game week 39 is not the same level as professional Premier League, so you do need to drop another 500,000, unfortunately. So jokes aside, I'll let you get your second tip out to the viewers before I rudely interrupted about this photo of you at the Emirates, which I found quite funny.
This is a new rule, actually, that I'm going to bring in for this year. It's kind of always been in the background for me, but I've never really committed it and put it down on paper as a rule. But obviously, every season we get teams with new managers. So, as an example, this year Brighton have got a new manager, Liverpool have got a new manager, Chelsea have got a new manager. There's three teams. Then you'll get new players into the league from abroad. And also you'll get new teams that have been promoted from the Championship, new players stepping into the Premier League maybe for the first time, things like that. Around those teams and players, there's a lot of unknown, right? You kind of, with the managers at least, you can have some sort of evidence and some gut feeling about how they'll play based on how they've played at previous clubs. But you don't quite know exactly how the players at the new club will fit into that system and that style of play. Liverpool being a good example here, that I can see a lot of managers maybe trying to triple up. The fixtures are there for Liverpool in the first 4 or 5 game weeks. Salah and Trent, I think, will be particularly popular. But will they work under the new manager's system? Will Trent be quite defensive, or will he be given full freedom to get forward? Will Salah be caught wide, or will he be playing central? All these things we don't know yet. So there's an element of risk, I think, attached to that, and an element of unknown. It feels a bit punty to go for these sorts of players, where if you look at Man City and Arsenal, for example, there's not really much change, right? There's no big new signings. I know there's speculation Arsenal might get Calafiori and things like that, but on the whole, you kind of know what you're going to get from Arsenal early on. You kind of know what you're going to get from Man City early on, and I prefer that stability and that known factor that if I pick this player, he's going to be playing in this position. He's going to have this player assisting him, creating for him. This is his main responsibility within the team. And with that, you can kind of predict how a matchup's going to go, how a game's going to pan out, and things like that. And I'd rather give it 4 or 5 game weeks and maybe use a wild card then or something. Once we get a bit more evidence how Chelsea will play, how Liverpool will play, how Brighton will play, then players within those systems will stand out as being good assets, I would imagine. And then I'll make the jump into those sorts of teams after 4 or 5 games. I think it's quite well known with strikers in particular that are new to the league. People get a bit excited and then doesn't go very well. Timo Werner, when he went to Chelsea, is quite a good example. I think everyone had quite high expectations for him. He was quite well owned in game week 1 of that year, and then everyone had to sell him because he didn't do very well. So I feel like more players flop than do well in that situation. So yeah, that's just a rule I'm going to try and stick to. I'm not saying I'm going to have no Liverpool or no Brighton in game week 1, but I'm certainly not going to go piling into those teams just because it's just a bit too punty for me.
No, I think I totally agree with you. Just on that note, while we're on this topic, because then we can talk about it now. You talked about Arsenal being a known, and I do worry that outside the defense, in terms of Saliba and Raya, it could still be that it is a bit of an unknown. Now, there is obviously Tomiyasu, who's not gone on the US tour in the preseason, and he's picked up a light injury. They're assessing he's been left at home, just precautionary, hopefully. But as you mentioned, with new signings coming in like Calafiori, then you got to start to worry because you've got Zinchenko still, he's not gone. You've got obviously Ben White, you've got Kipior, you've got Timbers coming back in as like a new signing almost. So I think personally, I see some people considering the double up, but if I do go, and right now the kind of the only draft I've had since the game launched, I do actually have double Arsenal attack. And so just I wanted to add to that, I think the defense could be like a new type of defense we've not seen yet. And apart from Saliba and I'd say Gabriel after him, and even Gabriel's not as secure, I would say. I'm not so convinced by that defense not being a new thing. So yeah, I would just consider them, even though Arsenal attack might be a more predictable and known, and Saliba might be a known, I'm avoiding the rest of the defense personally. But let me know if you're going double defense in the chat,
Do you
guys.
see a Man City situation with Arsenal? Obviously, their defence hasn't been the most trustworthy. You never quite know if it's Diaz, Akanji, Stones, Ake, Gavardio. People are taking risks with Gavardio. He's in a lot of drafts at the moment, right? And I expect
That's
him to
true.
play, but he might play like 3 or 4. I don't think you can trust any Man City defender to play all of the first 4. Do you
Probably
think
the same,
Arsenal
yeah.
is getting a bit more like that now?
For sure. I do think it's going that way. If you look at all the signings Arteta's ever signed since he arrived, like 4 or 5 seasons ago, is so many defenders. Like when you look at, there's like a photo of like the 8-man roster in the back line, say in 2019, just before COVID hit in March 2020 when he arrived in the COVID season. And then you just see that there's a whole different 8 players now. So like there's been
That's
16
probably
players have moved in total in these few
so.
seasons.
Yeah, Tierney, then Cedric, Maury,
He's still got
Nunez,
Tierney. He's not even been sold yet. He's picked up an injury for Scotland at the Euros, I think.
He did his hamstring, didn't he? Yeah, I remember. So
Yeah, so that's
yeah,
a bit of a
maybe
tough one.
Arsenal can't be trusted now either.
Yeah, so I worry about them, but yeah, I saw some good news. I think from the quotes that they spoke to Arteta ahead of the preseason tour, and did they think that players who came back late from the Euros would maybe miss game week 1 or be at risk of it? And he was like, he doesn't even think that that's like a thing to think about. Like everyone's getting ready and they're going to be fine, kind of thing. So I have no concerns as long as I know that like Saka plays. I've seen a lot of people talking about like Odegaard, Martinelli. I love those shouts. If I'm gonna start with an Arsenal attacker, I feel like I really want him. So that's maybe why I don't have the City players. And when we come to my draft, we'll notice that I know you probably have quite a different draft of mine, and that's something I like about the changes. So the pricing, I think we didn't talk about that being one of the things we're happy they changed this year as well. So overall, I am glad that's happened because it feels like I've seen quite a few different teams. Now, FPL review launched today, so we may see a shift, I think, in Haaland ownership going up and Salah going down, because at the moment Salah doesn't appear. I don't know over what period or what type of X minutes that's based on, so we're very far out from the season, so keep an eye out. I'll go through a couple of my 2 rules as well, I guess. I didn't know what photo to put. Your photo was you defending at the Emirates. It looked quite impressive. This was a meme that I think someone like Randy Shafter made of me when I used to be manager of our SKLW team. And this is before they sacked me. And now FPL Fella is the captain of the team. I will say I did win us a league title in my first season in charge after taking over from Lynn. But in the third year, obviously, we survived relegation from the Premier League. We're still in the top competition, and fellas come in to take us back to winning ways. But yeah, here's a photo again for podcast viewers. I apologize. 18 minutes in, you'll see this very ridiculous Photoshop, South Park-esque, I would say. My wife's reaction was, "Why is your head at that angle?" And I was like, "You've got to ask the genius of Randy Shafter."
Why is it so
So
red as well? That's my first question. Why you got such a
that
red
is
face?
so that is from the Emirates. So similar to your photo, it's me in the tunnel on the way onto the pitch with all the red lights. So it looks like I'm
Okay.
in the red light district. I'm glad you noticed that. That's pretty interesting. But so my big thing this year, and I think every year, is I want to try and avoid results-based analysis. Now, what I mean by that is I need to like learn the difference between when I've made a good decision and a bad outcome takes place versus when I've made a bad decision and a good outcome has taken place. So a lot of the time you might think like you're patting yourself on the back because your decision paid off, you got a lot of points, but you might not acknowledge the level of luck that was involved in that moment or fortune. So equally, what it ends up becoming, right, Craig, is you feel like every time you don't get the points, you are unlucky. But every time you did get the points, you made a good decision. And that feedback loop just becomes like this echo chamber that you're really great and you know what you're doing. And you're not willing to like adapt or change or analyze your decision making process and avoid making future decisions based on the outcome of previous decisions. And instead look at the process of your decision making. Now, that's a bit meta. So if you're new to FPL, if it's your first or second or third year, I apologize for that level of detail. We can talk about beginner tips in another episode, perhaps, but I'm sure everyone in the chat is well versed after coming over from Nick and Ash on Juice and seeing all those drafts getting rated and slated. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that before we go to the second point? Just in terms of, do you ever find yourself like kind of wondering whether you made the right choice and whether the only reason you think you made the wrong choice is because the points didn't come?
No, I think I've got quite good at this. Having played so long, I've got good at being happy with the decisions I make and not really feeling rushed into a decision or making a decision I didn't want to make. I've learned what sort of decisions tend to infuriate me if they go wrong and things like that. So, as an example, if I'm torn between two players in a particular week that I want to bring in, I'll always look at it and think, if X player does really well and I don't get them, how will that make me feel? And ultimately, which one of the two, if they have a good outcome and I don't have them, will make me the most frustrated? And I'll bring that player in to try and limit how negative I feel afterwards. So, in general, I don't get that down about FPL. I take it seriously. I dedicate a lot of time in a week. I do obviously do a podcast about it and give a lot of time in group chats and other chats around it. So, in terms of commitment, I'm probably high end. But despite, obviously, you then feel like you warrant a certain number of points because you put more effort in than someone who's basically listening to 10 minutes of a deadline day stream or something. But I've got a lot better at sort of managing that expectation. I don't feel like I get too down. I might get down because Villa have lost or something. I don't get too down around not getting many points or captaincy fail or something along them lines. I think it's just I've experienced most things, I guess, over the years now in the game. So I've got sort of something historical to look back on and think that made me feel like that. Was it really worth it? And ultimately, it's only a game, right? So
it's about trusting your process, right? It's like, I think that kind of what you're saying, and I guess the first point almost nicely segues into the second point, because it's all about, if you do trust the process, then you're not going to go on tilt. And I think that's exactly what BW Split is saying, our hauler in the chat, about nothing teaches the perils of results-based thinking better than poker. So yeah, so many times, and I think this is a great analogy. I play FPL, in fact, like poker, and you know my love for ownership, Craig, like EO and captaincy, and I feel like I'm playing against the field and I'm playing chess rather than I'm trying to get the most points, and that's the wrong way of playing for sure. If you want to win the game, 100%, I would not disagree there, but that's something I enjoy. So I think the next point, and we'll go on from here about just a few final drafts we'll look at and questions. So I want to also, as well as trusting our processes, Greg, I want to be able to learn to adapt. So in the past, I've like been stuck to my decisions where I'm like, I'm going to, use my wild card in this double game week. It's going to happen in game week 29. I'm going to wait. And then something changes. And like everyone did it in 26. I was then going to do it later, but then an opportunity came for game week 28. And Chelsea suddenly had a double game week they didn't have. And next thing I was like, oh, now there's a double game week in 28. The Chelsea was announced late. And there's the 29. And the people who wildcarded in 26 didn't have the info about the 28 double game week.
Yeah.
This was, I think, the season before last when Veg
was 2 seasons. Yeah.
Yeah, and Burnley and the double game week. So I remember I brought in Reece James. He got like 18 points. And then he got injured. And then I sold him for Robertson to bench boost in 29. So I literally last second changed my whole strategy from wildcard like 31 or something, or 34, bench boost 35. Because I was like, wait, I can get an edge. I can move here. Like everyone else has kind of gone in 26. And now instead of just being wed to my idea that I'm going to do the plan I had, something has changed, materially changed. So I've said here about chip opportunities, but also opposition injuries. If you think a fixture suddenly becomes much more targetable and there's certain suspicions and injuries and you want to just go all into it, now more than ever, when we're going to have maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 free transfers rolled up, some people, you could really go heavy steam piling into a team that you had 0 of before, get 3 of them, still have 2 free transfers, get the one for the week after, and then transfer all 3 of them back out. We can do stuff we've never seen. And I'm so excited by these prices and so many players in those price points that you were talking about. So yeah, that's my thing. I want to assess this season because there's never been a season with rules like this season. So there must be something that we'll notice where there will be a chance to get an edge. And it's harder and harder to get an edge, right?
I wouldn't call myself a maverick, but I've got a maverick streak in me. And this kind of feeds into what you're saying here. I'm always looking to do something different just because there's no real reason for it. It's probably one of my detriments in the game, really, that I can't help myself, that I feel like I have to try and be a smart ass. I don't want to follow the template. I have to do something differently to everybody else to justify it to myself that I get. It's not an arrogance, but I feel like I need to prove that I'm better than what the template is doing. So I have to try and do one or two things that are a bit. I might bring a different player in. I might play a chip in a different week. And I think this year will become a bit easier again for me because I think there won't be such an obvious template now. It's not a case of roll or make one particular transfer, move X player to Y, which is what the templates become quite a lot. Now each week someone will have one transfer, someone will have four. There'll be all sorts of different ways to play the game now. That I think those that have played by basically following review and following a template, there's still a place for them and they still may do well playing that way. But I think it'll be a lot harder for review to seek out the optimum moves this year. And
especially because
people
it's
will
so
maybe have to
new,
make their
right?
own decisions because people will naturally have teams now that is not like what the content creators have got. So people will be forced into making their own decisions now rather than just copying somebody else or copying an algorithm site or something. So hopefully this will play to my advantage. But yeah, it's exciting. Anything that's new and different and sort of opens the game up is exciting, right? So it's probably the most I've looked forward to a season for 4 or 5, I would say, in FPL.
It feels the most refreshing. I think it's been 8 seasons prior to this one where the only change that happened was there was the introduction of chips, like in the 8 seasons ago, whenever it was. Then they kind of did the reskins every year, and then they changed the all-out attack chip to a different chip. That was like the only changes in 8 years. And they increased the mini leagues from 20 to 25, then 25 to 30.
I'm not sure we always got 2 wildcards either from memory. Maybe they had
Yeah,
another
that
one of
came at
those.
some point within those 8 years, probably. Yeah. So that's kind of the main changes. And, so I'm glad to see true innovation this season. We've all complained for so long that they don't listen and they don't take feedback, but it looks like they've engaged the community. And the biggest tell was the kind of time it took, right, since the game launched to get to 6-digit team IDs was faster than I've ever seen any other prior season. And that's concerning as well, because obviously you would think that normally there's maybe like 500,000 to 1 million people left by the end who you're like truly competing against. And sometimes you are fighting against dead teams whose assets are just doing really well and you're getting unlucky, right? So I think there's more players than ever, and maybe this big marketing push for them will work. And let's see how
I
it
think
goes.
I entered about 15 minutes after the game launched. I think my team ID is about 25k or something. So that's announced just like 15 minutes after the launch. So yeah, loads of people must have been on the button,
A lot of
waiting for that
people.
moment.
Yeah, it was tough, man. I'll show you guys my draft. So obviously the game came out last week this time, and I did an auto pick team, of course. I panicked to find where the button was. It had moved. I got an even slower team ID because of it. Now, I've only made a few changes, Craig. And just for everyone in the chat, I'm going to warn you, I've not changed anything since the changes on the first day the game released. And I probably plan to change nothing until after the Community Shield. And I'm going to use every episode over the next few weeks. There'll be the weekly episode every Wednesday or Tuesday, for example, when I go to the Emirates Cup preseason game. On those days, I'm going to slowly work out what the changes are and watch the Community Shield, see the preseason. I'm excited. I'm going to be watching Arsenal at like 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the US over this next week, and then like working the next day. And like, it's going to be mad. I'm excited. Preseason scouting is my favorite time. So for the podcast listeners, the team I have put in place, just so you know, is I've got Petrovic. This is a bit of a mad one. Petrovic and Sanchez both in goal. I have Trent Alexander-Arnold, Saliba, Burn, Dunk, and Harwood Bellis. I have Mo Salah, Saka, Gordon, and Kunku. I have Havertz, Isaac, Ja, Pedro, and I have Kudus as well on the bench. So yeah, what are your thoughts, Craig? Because I've obviously changed nothing, as I say. I know there's been some doubts about him. Saka, if I didn't think he'd start game week 1, he could be out on my team. And Kunku's a bit of a punt coming back from injury, but I like it. And Dunk's just there because I have memories and trust him, but he could be anyone really. Like I've seen Mikalenko in that spot. I kind of like that more maybe. But yeah, what are your general thoughts? And those keepers are just meaningless. I've just put 4.5 keepers if that's what they cost for a team structure.
Petrovic might be off, right? I don't know. He's not on the preseason tour at the moment, so I don't know what he's doing. But in terms of, I think it's the same as like the Crystal Palace keepers, right? We're not completely sure who's going to play. Henderson and Johnston are both 4.5, so I don't think it hurts to pick the 2 4.5s for the same team. If you just want the same team coverage, I think you can get the 2 Wolves keepers for 8.5. I think Sarr and the backup Bentley, I think you can get for 8.5. So if you want to save the 0.5, you can do that. But I don't. In principle, I don't hate the idea of just picking the first choice and the backup from the same team. I think I had Flecken and Strakosha for a chunk of last season from Brentford. So same principle, right? So I think that's fine.
The problem, though, right, is these guys are taking up Chelsea spots. That's the one thing I realized, because when I then went to try add, say, like Palmer, for instance, that's something that's missing from my draft. I don't have any City players. Guardiola's missing. Foden's missing. You could argue Watkins is missing. There are players missing, but Kudus is also a bit of a random one. I don't think I've seen him in many teams, if I'm honest. He's probably my most unique player, I would say, in this draft. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, it's not a bad one. There's so many 6.5s, and I couldn't tell you right now who the best is. I'm obviously a bit of a biased Villa fan, but I think Leon Bailey is incredible value at 6.5. So I won't put people off Kudus. He's shown, particularly in the middle of last season, I think he went on a bit of a scoring run, didn't he? From sort of game week 10 to 20, did he get 7-8 attacking returns or something? So he's clearly capable. And this is my reason I say for putting Eze in my draft at the start, because he's 0.5 more than that crowd. And I don't know which one of that crowd I want. So rather than start with the wrong one, I'll just start with Eze, and then I'll move down to one of them, and it frees up money in the process. But Kudus I couldn't put anyone off Kudus. I think he's fine. Another team with a new manager, though. So how will they fare under the new manager? I probably wouldn't start with him for that reason. Not because I don't think he's good value, but it's just an unknown. Is he going to play as a 10? Is he going to play off the right? Where's Bowen fit in? And all these sorts of questions. And even pre-season, you might get a bit of evidence of where they play in those games, but that's still no guarantee for game week 1, is it? I think when the season starts, you get a bit more clarity then on how teams set up. So will Bowen start up front for West Ham this year? It's possible, right? Based on what we know. And then Kudus could maybe play off the right or something. Is he better off the right, or is he better as a 10? So too many questions for me to start with him. So, but in terms of value for money, he could do well. Dan Burn, another one. They've just signed Lloyd Kelly from Bournemouth, Newcastle, for a fair chunk of money. Eddie Howe clearly knows him well from Bournemouth. He played as a centre-back primarily, but then played left-back as well. I would argue when they're spending that sort of money, it'll be an upgrade and likely replacement for Burn. So is Burn guaranteed?
He's also a hole in my team. So Burn is a problem. Kudus is under a new manager, and Kunku's back from injury. There are definitely a lot more punts.
Is he worth it to start with?
Yeah, true. Like where will they all play? Now, the one alternative that I've not tried, and I think this is something I will do in the preseason after the Community Shield, is I've only ever done this Salah team. So I've not tried to do a Salah Haaland team. I've not tried to do a Haaland team. I've not tried to do a team with neither. This is just what I've gone for. I've gone heavy, tripled up on certain teams, very aggressive. So yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. That's something I would think about. Now, FPL Fella asks, and this seems relevant, so I will start to put in comments from the chat, and thank you everyone for tuning in while we're here. So Fella asks you specifically, Craig, would Craig have Duran at 6 million if he moves to West Ham and is nailed to start?
If I had a strategy that needed a player at that price point, yes. I've seen teams now with Muniz or Chris Wood or someone like that. They're about 6 million, both of those two. I think Duran has the capabilities of doing very well. He's quite raw. He's quite a clinical finisher. I'd certainly pick him over Chris Wood. I think him against Muniz is quite tight, but I wouldn't put people off. I think that's a fair price for a starting striker at West Ham with his capabilities. So my team at the moment, whether I stick to this draft or not, has got 3 more expensive strikers than that, so I don't need that price point. I think my draft at the moment's got Isak, Havertz and Watkins as the front 3. I'm not coming down to the 6 million. But if you've got Haaland and you're looking for a third playing striker to accommodate that, then yeah, I think he's a decent own. This again, just another one. Do you go for Muniz at the start? Fulham, I think, on some of the picture tickers are suggesting that Fulham starts quite good. Again, you know from Fulham last year what you're going to get from Muniz. I think how the team's going to set up. West Ham, new manager, a new player into the new manager's plans. Maybe again slightly risky. So I'm kind of contradicting myself. I think over a season, I think 6 million he'll be good. I think if it was me, though, based on what I know at the moment, I'd probably start with Muniz ahead of him just for that sort of security of knowing what to expect from him. But you're getting a good player for 6 million if you get him.
I think one thing I'm just going to do as well before we go on from this draft, right? So we have kind of the FDRs for the first 5 game weeks from an attacking point of view. We have them from a defending point of view, and we have the top scorers from the spread betting markets. So before we look at those very briefly, we'll probably look at those only for 5 minutes as a quick scan. We'll then go to the Q&A. I've already started 16 questions in the chat from everyone. So sorry if it feels like we've not come to you guys, but this is going to be a much shorter episode than we're used to at Net That Haul. It's not going to be 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So we've just gone straight into it. Halfway through, I will say, please do hit that like button if you're enjoying the episode so far. Subscribe if you're new. If you've come over from Juice and it's your first time, we will be relaunching next week. There's also some more news that will come. So as well as this channel relaunching under a new brand with the kind of rotating guests each week and the fun perspectives we're going to bring this season with the casual fireside chats, there is a YouTube channel linked in the video description and podcast description that I opened today. Keep an eye out for the 13th of August, Tuesday. That is something else that will be announced in due course. It has currently the name Lawnmower. It's just a code name. It's in stealth mode. Please go and subscribe if you want to support me, what I'm going to do next, and what is going to be an exciting new season of content that I'll be announcing for the kind of, I guess, the phoenix that will rise from the flames of Net That Haul and the success of it over the last 4 seasons, the Arsenal podcast with Clayton, and now a third new baby along the way. So please do go to the video description and follow the new channel, and you will be first to hear about this. So before I go into all of those FDRs, let's just shout out everyone who's tuned in live. So FPL Juice first in the show tonight. Thank you guys for getting everyone involved. Podner, one of our haulers as well. What's up, Podners? Good to see you, buddy. Give me a holla. We've got BW Splitter next. Howdy, all good to see you. Lindsay O, lots of haulers here, all coming in for the farewell show. We've got Gabriel as well at FPL Lens himself here to support the gang. Nehal, good to see you, buddy. Who else do we have? We have Claire FPL. Good to see you. Thank you for tuning in. FPL Eric, lovely to see you. Glad you were looking forward to this. And it's also great that Gabe was here too. FPL Discomfort says, I'm not crying, you're crying. So I think it's been a tough time. Fingermabob, good to see you. Wishing everyone the best. By far my favorite podcast. Sohan, lovely to see you. Thank you for tuning in. FPL Mike Halpin, thank you for tuning in, buddy. Blue Danube Joe, good to see you, mate. Lots of haulers been here tonight. Love you all. Sorry that it's taken so long to say hi. And now I'm rushing through to make sure we say hello to everybody as an intermission before we continue. If you want to get some water, now's a good time. You could bring some for me through the channel too. But FPL Eric, new member, first time hauler. We will see if the haulers may remain being called haulers going forwards as a legacy to Net That Haul. I think there's an Alexa talking to me or there's something, but maybe it's you, Craig, but I don't know. I can hear something talking, but I'm not imagining it. So a couple more shout outs. Ratkin Rat, love the name. Good to see you. Evening, mate. RIP Net That Haul. Elron Cupboard, good to see you. JK, good to see you. Nathan Smith, no Grimsby fans doing any podcast this season makes me sad. That is very true. Ignatius Brian Laxana, good to see you, buddy. We got FPL fella asking, what guests have you got lined up? So there's at least, I'd say, 10 to 15 people who've said yes. So there's a long roster I need to announce at some point. And I'm sure there'll be some regulars, hopefully like Craig, who will come back again. We have who else? We have Gareth, Pashley, good to see you. Sorry to see Net That Haul version going. Loved it. Getty FPL evening. Darnish, good to see you, buddy. Colm, good to see you. FPL Maggot. Raid from Juice, FPL Wade Wilson, good to see you. Wow, we have got a lot of people. We've been popular tonight, mate. K7, good to see you. FPL K9, we're going to miss Gabe's insights for sure. I think we're almost there, guys. Thank you for bearing with us. Evening, gents from Black Screen. And yeah, I've got a few questions starred as well. I think we're almost here. We've said hello to everybody who's come in, I hope. If we missed you, apologies. And one last one, Red or Dead69, thank you for the message. I will put this question at the end, buddy, in the Q&A, which we're going to get to in about 5 minutes time. And I'll make sure we answer that for you. And what have we got here? We got FPL Discomfort mentions, Nima hates the mystery chip, but teases the mystery channel. Yes. I can see the the hypocritical nature of my ways at FPL Discomfort, mate. So yeah, let's I think go into the FDRs. And should we just have a super brief look because it's so far out? And as I said, I'm unlikely to change my team till Community Shield. Maybe we just talk about the top 3 or 5 attacking teams. So this is obviously the Fantasy Football Hub Opta stats area. They interestingly have over the first 5 game weeks Fulham top for attack with 9.1 goals for. The top 4 are kind of tied, really. It's Southampton, Crystal Palace, and Liverpool between 8.9 and 9.1 for all of them in terms of goals. A little bit of a drop to Leicester, Brighton, Newcastle, and then Man City with 8.3. On the opposite end of the table, we've got Chelsea actually forecast to score the least goals. Man United and Arsenal in the bottom 5 or 10 almost as well. So it does make me rethink perhaps some of my team here, going with a risk like an Nkunku when he's supposedly in the bottom 20th for attack in terms of fixture difficulty. Now, why I've chosen 5 game weeks is because I want to see whether I can attempt to do the whole rolling all the first 5 game weeks and then wild card in game week 6 and then still have 5 free transfers going forwards and just see if that's a new strategy that I've never been able to do before and it's like a first time. Because I used to be able to roll free transfers in the fan team game last year. But if you used your chip, you would lose them. So this is like a whole nother new level of layer of strategy that didn't even exist then. And I feel like quite excited to give that a go. So another reason is to plug the Wire lads. They just did an episode, I think, earlier today, talking about like wildcard windows, and they compared lots of different ones with different timestamps for each of them. So the one that resonated with me most was the game week 6 wildcard in that video. So I'm not going to attempt to repeat their brilliance. Go and check that out in your own time, guys. Anything on the attack here scream out to you, Craig, before we just move on swiftly?
I just don't like a lot of these attacks. I don't think I'd say newly promoted teams, not for me. Southampton and Leicester. I think Liverpool, as I've said, new manager. Brighton, new manager. Crystal Palace, not necessarily a new manager, but it's going to be a bit of an overhaul in how they play. Obviously, Elise's left. So elements of risk with how that's going to work. They've got the new guy, Kamada, that just brought in, who's worked with Glasner before. They've got the young lad, Franca, who played a little bit last year. Will he play Jordan Ayew? So Fulham, as I just mentioned, Mooney's to Fella's question just now. I think he's a steady person to start with. I don't hate him for these good fixtures. So I think Eze's a helpful one to start with because you can come down from him to one of the 6.5s. Other than that, the top group of this I'm not overly keen on for various reasons. So I know people have put time and effort into this, but I think I'm going to ignore it. This chart.
I wouldn't disagree. I'm currently ignoring it, right? With like double Arsenal attack, Chelsea attacker. Like the last thing, I'm just having a look. Do I have anyone from? Okay, no, Watkins. I don't have Watkins or Solanke. Okay, fine. Son is there. Yeah, no, I don't know. I think easily as well. When you change this to say 4 weeks or 6 weeks, you just see the order change probably quite a bit. Maybe not massively, but it will overall. So I would always take it with a pinch of salt any period of time you're looking over. The reason I like this is because I like to look at the attacking FDR separate to the defensive FDR, because I think the attack can have a good fixture, but your defense could have a bad fixture, for example. So I just don't think the official FPL FDR is fit for purpose. And as you know, we don't have Mariners now anymore going forward. So we will use the tools we have. I will also look at Scout because I did see they had the Stats Bomb contract this year, which I've always heard is supposed to be the best XG model in the industry. I'm a sucker. I'm subscribed to every tool, every app. Like, I just love this shit. I love the data. So for me, any new cool stuff I'll check out from both services. I'd like to say I'm platform agnostic and not exclusive with anybody. So yeah, the defensive FDR, and then we'll go on to the Q&A. This one has Liverpool top, but as you mentioned rightly, it still only predicts 1.1 clean sheet in those 5 fixtures. It then has Aston Villa 1.1 as well, and Brighton 1.1. Closely followed by like 6 teams on 1, which is Fulham, Southampton, Palace, Forest, Newcastle, Leicester, Everton. None of the teams any of us are probably expecting. That's Chelsea, Arsenal, United, Spurs, City, all bottom half from a defensive FDR point of view for the first 5. What are your thoughts in this case then? So is there any assets here that, like, does this make Trent like a lock-in for you? I know you said earlier, like, am I sure? Because obviously it's a new system, but when you combine both their attacking and their defensive FDRs, they're close to top in both, top for defense.
Am I wrong here to view all 20 teams as the same? Because 1.1 we would round down to 1, and 0.6 we would round up to 1. So basically all 20 teams are going to get 1 clean sheet. So
if you don't do any decimal places, but we are doing decimal places, unfortunately.
I think this suggests you
It's
play.
so
Looking at
close.
these
But
numbers,
would you
this is
say
plays
no
clear.
clean sheets? Is this
Yeah,
predicting one clean? Is that like nothing else to take from this table? Just free at the back. That's what we're suggesting then.
three at the back and cheap.
I love it. Fair enough. I guess that does mean that we need to also look at kind of the new bonus changes, see how that impacts assets, and if that changes the way we think this season. I want to very quickly look at the top projected scorers. This one is not from Fantasy Football Hub. This one is from Rob TFPL on Twitter. He's got the 24-25 season top projected scorers based on spread betting season-long goal markets. So the total projected goals got Haaland on 27, Salah on 18.8, Saka on 16.8, tied with Watkins, Isaac, and Son all on 16.8. Then we go down to 15.8 for Solanke and Tony, 14.8 for Palmer, 14.3 for Havertz, and then we get to Darwin, Foden, Jackson, and so on. Eze makes it in at 9.5 at the bottom there. And we go all the way down to Gross on 5.8, Pascal Gross. So this has 60 players. Come and look at it, 46 minutes in the timestamps if you want to see, or go to Rob TFPL on Twitter. And anything scream out to you here from these guys? And I would say, firstly, just that Palmer, I think people were surprised. They were asking if it included penalties, and it does. It's all goals. Are you surprised by that? Is it shocking to think that they won't get as many penalties as, like, statistically speaking, as they did last season?
No, I think you don't know where he's playing again, right? New manager, will he play him as a 10? Will he play him off the right? Those things have an impact on his output. You would think maybe if he's out wide, he'll get more assists. Maybe as a 10, he's in the box more. Is he guaranteed to take penalties? In Kunku's, you obviously mentioned him already in this pod, he's back. He always took pens before they signed him everywhere. Is it a guarantee that Nkunku being back in the team takes pens off Palmer? I think it's unlikely, but we have to think about it as a possibility that it could happen. So I think that's reasonable for Palmer. The two that stand out, I think Solanke, who's barely been seen in any draft I think I've seen so far. Steady numbers again for 7.5. If he delivers 16 goals, I think he'll be value for money. And Saka, right? Third on this list. Plus, you expect him to get a decent number of assists. I'm sure he'll get a little bit of clean sheet points and stuff as well. He's probably arguably potentially the best value player in the game, looking at those towards the top of this list, because
And this is without the
is
assists,
it 10
right?
million? Is he, or 10 and a half?
Yeah, 10. Half a million more than Foden and half a million cheaper than Palmer.
Yeah, I think 10. If you get 17 goals and let's say you can get double figure assists and all the other stuff that comes with it, I think 10 million will be decent value. So if these numbers are accurate, I think Saka, Solanke, are two that probably stand out to me the most. And yes, I'm not surprised really by the Palmer figure here.
Yeah, no, I think the Palmer figure there, the Havertz figure is quite appealing. I think as an Arsenal fan, I'm not sure we will go for a centre forward at this point this summer. And on top of that, I don't even know if we'll get that pacey winger option. I think we will if the opportunity arises, but right now we're looking at that fetish I was talking about with defenders, and we're going to want another central midfielder. We already bought a goalkeeper. We're going to look for another goalkeeper. Like, we'll keep it moving. Hopefully some sales might occur. There's a lot of talk about Smith Rowe. If he kind of fights and stays to fight, that would be great. But I wouldn't begrudge him, and they wouldn't stand in his way if he wanted to leave. So Fulham made a bid for him. That was rejected. I believe it was 30 mil they were saying. We wanted 35, supposedly. Palace supposedly bid. Not heard nothing about that since that bid went in, supposedly. So, and that's been days. So I don't know. Smith Rowe's in America. He's on this tour. He scored in the friendly before we left. So yeah, let's see what happens. But if he
Captain as
does
well,
go,
wasn't he? Just him
yeah,
with an
he got the
armband on.
armband. Yeah, he
Yeah.
got it. But then Arteta is a savage. You look at some of the other players who had an armband on in preseason and then they were sold that same year in the summer. It's happened before, so I wouldn't put it past us. Yeah, I would just want to comment on Saka. I have Isaac in my team. I like this. Saka, I think last season there was a lot of talk about how he'd overperformed his kind of expected data the season prior to last season, and that last season he would revert back. Obviously, he didn't. He got more. He's now had 5 seasons of professional football. Just by 22, he's already done that. And the sheer number of minutes is insane. It's actually disgusting, including international football. So I do truly believe that the expected data now and the bookies' confidence, they're finally taking into account just the experience he has and how often he's come from setback, and each time any setback has taught him. So for me personally, I buy into like psychology a lot, and kind of losing that Euros final I view it as something that he will bounce back from and have more of a grudge or vendetta to come and do something, especially with what happened with City as well the last 2 seasons. So I'm excited. I'm pretty shocked that he's being respected in this bookies markets, because last season he wasn't, and many people thought the expected numbers would catch up with him. But the reality is he has some of the best expected numbers in the league and in Europe and in every tournament he plays. So, incredible player. Can't wait to see more of him. And Bukayo is like a son to every Arsenal fan. I'm sure they would agree. So yeah, should we go to the Q&A, Craig, with everyone? And then we'll because we're already at 9:30, but 50 minutes in. We said we do 1 hour max, so we could quickly go through a few questions. Cool.
Yeah, what we got?
BW Splitter. Oh, this was the poker comment. We've already read that. So BW Splitter, Nima, can you explain why you prefer Saliba over Gabriel and even White or Calafiori? I'm struggling to choose. I've just gone for Saliba. From what I saw, the maturity in the tournament as well, playing out of his favoured position on the left centre back with his partner Upamecano. Saliba came in as the junior partner in that, and he left the senior partner of that partnership by the end of the tournament. I think next season, the next thing he needs to do is bring that kind of aura that we see and that calmness to the Champions League stage, to the knockout rounds, and to kind of get over the hoodoo of like the Bayern game last time. So just like Saka, I think he will gain from these experiences, very young and done what he's done, being in team of the tournament or team of the year for every league he's played in over the last 3-4 seasons, both in France and England and in the Euros tournament. I'm very excited by him. So I love Gabriel. I think he's more of a goal threat. Overall, I would go with him if I wasn't convinced that something might change in that back line. Just for that reason, I'm out. I have to wait on Gabriel. If he was cheaper, I'd 100% be in. If he was 5.5, but at the same price as Saliba, he's the only one, based on what I said as well, that I just know that he needs to go up another level again. People never really talk about his age, but they talk about how great he plays. I think by 2026, he's going to be a serious part of that French squad in the next World Cup. And honestly, I have fears of him leaving for Real Madrid if he doesn't win one of the big trophies in the next 2 seasons. So yeah, I just think he's an incredible player, and I have to go for him. And part of it is I want to go back to why I started playing FPL in the first place, which is buying assets that I wanted to watch in the game. And I don't think I did that as much over the last few seasons. This one can be for you, Craig, and we'll be more quick-fired than that. That was a bit personal with the Arsenal part, but Podna, did they get the prices right this year? And this time we're going to try and be quick-fire if we can.
On the whole, I think they've made it interesting. It's personal opinion, right or wrong. There'll be some that are right, some that will be wrong. I think Nkunku's cheap. I think Rashford's cheap. I think Palmer's probably a little bit expensive. I think Haaland. I think Haaland is obviously the main one. The rest of the prices fall in line behind him. If he goes into game week 1 with an ownership around 50% or less, they've got the prices right. So I think on the whole, yes, I think most of the defenders are probably pretty fair. A lot of the centre backs from reasonable teams are 4.5. A lot of the fullbacks from reasonable teams are 5. I say you can nitpick at a couple being a 0.5 here too expensive, but I think on the whole, yeah, I'm fairly happy with the prices. I don't think it's particularly around the midfield, right? That you look at the midfield we ended last season with. That midfield is now going to cost about 10-15 million more, and it had to. You can't have. You can't be having that midfield again.
Saka, Palmer, Foden, and Gordon.
And Salah. You can't be having that 5 midfield and still having Haaland with them. That's not feasible for the game.
Haaland and Watkins or
Haaland. So, yeah, I would say on the whole the prices are good.
What about 15 million for Haaland as a follow-up question from Pod?
Yeah, I think it's good because they paid him 14 million in the hope to give people a decision. He was still like 80% owned in game week 1 last year. It didn't really have an impact on people. 15 million, I think, will make it more 50-50. And I don't think it's good for the game if anyone's over 50% owned.
This one's for you, actually, from Kieran. So this one is, Craig, do you know anywhere we can learn about how new managers may set up?
He's signalling people towards a pod me and him are actually doing on my pod on Friday. So on the Man on Friday, me and him are going to have a tactical look at Brighton, Liverpool and Chelsea. How the managers like to set up, which players will play in which role within that, which players will become good FPL assets as a result of that. So yeah, I think sort of on Friday. We're going to have a little chat about that. So he's a little bit of self-promotion there, Kieran.
We'll send people your way though, and Kieran, I did notice the hauler status dropped. The membership was removed, my friend. But FPL fella, love Craig's idea. Start with players you trust and move on to the ones that will show you what they're doing. That's just a comment. Elron Cupboard, another one of our haulers on Patreon. Kai versus Odegaard. I'm personally going to say Kai here. I like that he doesn't take up a midfield slot as well, especially if I'm going to look at like double Arsenal attack. It just feels like a no-brainer. But yeah, let me see what else we have. So the next question, unless you disagree, do you have any points towards Odegaard?
No, Havertz for me. I think his bonus point potential goes up by being a striker. I think as well, and I think you could argue he's maybe 0.5 cheap. Havertz, where I don't think Odegaard's necessarily cheap. I think he's a fair price. Saka's probably a fair price. I think there's an argument Odegaard is Havertz is a little bit cheap, especially if you say Nima they won't sign another striker. I think
I don't think they will.
Up front.
I think he's the starting striker now for Arsenal going into the season. Let's obviously watch pre-season, and I'll be watching those 3 a.m. games, as I said. So, black screen, Havertz better than Saka, shortly. Yeah, I think Havertz was the first one in my team, and if I was going to drop one before the game week 1 deadline, it'd probably be not Havertz. So, yep, I agree. So, FPLK9, avoid teams with new managers to avoid Sir Palmer. So one of the rules, obviously, you mentioned earlier in the pod, in your rules for kind of FPL, was about avoiding new things in general. I don't have Palmer in my current draft. Maybe I will cave in eventually, but right now I just want to wait and see what Chelsea do, and I'm just going to try and back the variance of not getting penalties as much as they did, basically.
I've not even considered it for game week 1. Will he play on the right? Will he play as a 10? Will he take penalties? They've got Man City game week 1. It's a wait and see until sort of week 3, week 4, I think, and then come back to it for me.
What about Ignatius? Avoid King Mo too then? So I'm on Mo right now.
Not so easy because of the fixtures and because of what he's generally like. But I'm hesitant. He's the one player that I might break the rule with. At the moment, I do have him because I think his ownership will be very good in game week 1. And I don't want to be caught short if he does go off against Ipswich. I'm more likely to have Salah than Trent, I think, at the moment. But it's very unlikely I have both. I think it will just be one Liverpool player for me, one of them two. And I'm not overly keen on no Salah and no Haaland. And I think Haaland's too expensive. So Salah's in, but certainly not set on that.
That's fair. I think for me, I've currently got Salah in, but I will keep a lookout on what happens with that Liverpool attack and if there's a cheaper way in. But part of it is the fixtures as well, and part of it is he's just like 2.5 million cheaper than Haaland, right? So in my mind, I'm only probably going to have one of the two. I do worry though that actually Haaland will be the higher ownership come deadline with FPL reviews release, unless some things change under the hood and you see Salah's kind of appear in more of the solves when they run the algorithm. But yeah, I'm interested to see the impact the review has on the casual player base as well across work mini leagues and groups of friends at home and family leagues, because definitely I'd say the data and the algorithms are getting more and more out there into the ecosystem. And it's becoming like other kind of fantasy sports in the US where like it's very data driven, right? And kind of like European fantasy sports as a, I guess, opposite has always been a bit behind, lagging behind. So that's my thoughts. Europe is catching up with American fantasy sports, and hopefully we see more exciting changes from FPL. So what do we have here? We have Red or Dead's question. Is going for Haaland or Salah and fixture-based teams like Fulham and Forest to make up the numbers with an early wildcard? So would you kind of just like put together a team that's like got, you know, whoever you prefer for fixtures from the premiums of Haaland and Salah, or I think it might be both they mean, but then because you need to fund both of them, right, with budget options from Fulham and Forest, and you kind of then tied into the wildcard, they're saying.
I don't hate it. The latest Man On pod, we did a little plug for that pod. We looked at game week 1 strategies, and then we put together some teams that fit in with that strategy. And some of the strategies we looked at had Haaland and Salah both in. Some looked at what you might do for an early wildcard, even in game week 2, and really attack game week 1. Some looked at sort of proactive early transfers. I know you said, Nima, at the moment you're quite keen to roll through the first 4 or 5 weeks and then play the wild card.
That might change though, but yeah.
There's a team in our pod that is very proactive in using the free transfers early to try and gain an edge, because more managers might be hesitant and look to roll the transfers. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. I think what you do have to sort of have half an idea, I wouldn't say completely commit to, but have half an idea of what sort of plan you want early on. I don't think you can play with no plan. So I think you have to go in with an agenda that you're happy to wildcard game week 4, you're happy to wildcard game week 6, you're happy to roll transfers. I think you have to have a sort of a strategy in mind. Obviously, there's a bit of flexibility within that. So if your strategy is have Haaland and Salah, cover the 2 big players, make sure probably by having both, you probably guarantee yourself a reasonable start in the game. And then if it looks like you need to move off one or the other players you've got in your squad aren't performing, then the wild card's there as a get. Or let's say you roll 3 transfers and then in game week 4 you've got multiple transfers to make some changes. So I don't think you can advise on what's right or wrong. The way they play the game is different, right? I can't say having both of them is a good thing. I can't say having neither of them is a good thing. This strategy with, if you have the best 2 players, you obviously have to have weaker players with them to afford it. It's pretty obvious. But that might be the best way to start.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think because we've hit the 1 hour, I'm now going to definitely just do these last few real time. I'm not going to take any new questions, but there's some funny ones in here as well. So very quickly, Elron asked about Arsenal lads, Eddie, Reece and Smith Rowe. Yes, I think definitely just if they get moves to Premier League clubs, keep a lookout. Eddie looks like he's going to France though, I think, and Smith Rowe might stay. So let's just keep a lookout. FPL discomfort. Which Arsenal player, if they get their rumored move, interests you the most? So I think for me, Smith Rowe at Palace would interest me the most if that happened. I'm not sure if I would buy him at Fulham, but again, good in either one, as long as he's getting minutes. Ignatius, who's your top picks for the 6.5 million midfielder slot? So I'm going to play the clip by request from Podner, just while I look at who are the 6.5 million midfielders for now. But let me quickly get you guys a clip. So from the old times, and Nick's here as well. So I've just seen his trigger here. So we'll come to you, mate. He says, with the ability to say 5 transfers, will it make managers too cautious? He likes to be aggressive and build team value early and is not planning on changing style. That's a really good counterpoint. That is really quite a point that I'd love to discuss with you, in fact. So I've already kind of let the viewers know today that there are going to be many guests coming on in the future. And we're looking to get Nick on in one of the early game weeks of the season, bring the gang back together. With that in mind, I am going to look for these 6.5 million midfielders to tell you who's our favorite. But I'm going to play a kind of 1-minute clip from Nick himself. And it's by popular demand in the live chat. If you're new and you didn't see this on Net That Haul at the time, enjoy. The legend of FPL, Nick Triggerlips. Some of the best ranks and best 3-year history I've ever seen in any FPL manager. And he was disgusted. Just watch him drink the water bottle after he sees live on air a popular FPL bandwagon from Twitter's score. And while that goes on, enjoy, get your water, and we will come back to answer the final questions.
And he's getting his goals and assists. Oh, 3-1. Hold up. Don't know
this
who
is
scored
getting
the
fucking
third.
annoying.
I think it's the Corey.
Again,
Or no, Gray
great.
scored.
So I've got him in
Oh,
Sky.
fuck
Okay. Oh no, that's going to damage my FPL rank though. You're right.
Gray
Whatever
scored.
happens, it's so sad when our FPL is more important than fan team. That's
Can't
devastating.
Next on
Brilliant.
pulp.
I bet livefpl.net is going to crash. Let's have a look. Oh wow, the average and the safety score have gone way up.
Having
not even
DCL out and then having that prick Gray score, it's just like it's ruined my fucking day, though. You know, you get
It's ruined my day too, to be fair.
all 10 midfielders blank, don't they? And you just know that fucking Gray's going to come along and fuck up your game week.
On a Monday night.
Except all the pricks on Twitter who've all got him. That's only people who was 99% of people posting on Twitter tonight will have him.
All the wildcarders. All
the rest will have turned off.
Or game week 4, is it? Yeah, all the game week 4 wildcarders have him.
All the ones that just got Gray because everyone else was, and like he got a goal a week before. You know, the depth of their analysis, and it's rough. And they only got him because it's the only one they could afford to get because they were getting Ronaldo, you know.
Do you know who the next one is, though? Gallagher. So I always say, if you look at the transfers and you transfer a player out.
All right, there we go. So that was nice to see the bandwagon pick getting slated. So who's your top 6.5 million midfielder, Craig? I see Rice is a bit of a shocking one because if he was 5.5, I was quite interested. So when I saw him come in at 6.5, I was disappointed. Do you think he could still prove to be value for that price yet?
Depends what you want from the spot. I think his minutes are very secure. I think Arsenal play him more of an 8, don't they? I think England, obviously, if you're looking from what England's using him as a 6, I think he's got a reputation of being quite a defensive midfielder. But you'll know yourself that he plays for Arsenal. He's a little bit more attacking than that, box to box. Take some corners, capable of sort of multiple goal returns. I don't think he'll be the top scorer in 6.5 million mid, but I think you'll get a steady number of points from him. The two that probably I'm looking at most are Leon Bailey. I say as a Villa fan, I think he's actually quite now, despite the fact now we've got about 15 midfielders trying to fit into about 4 or 5 positions. It's actually quite hard to predict our team. And I know a few people might be interested in Morgan Rogers because he's 5 million as a midfielder and he's started pre-season quite well, ended last season quite well. But quite hard to predict how Villa all set up. I think Bailey will play when he's fit at the majority, so I think he's good. The slightly more sort of off template one, I think, is Brennan Johnson at 6.5. I think he's probably likely to be first choice out wide now. I think Tottenham could really do a number on Leicester in game week 1. I wouldn't be surprised if they won that by 2 or 3 goals. Whether Johnson's in the returns there, I don't know, but I think he'll probably prove value over the season at 6.5. So one of those 2 to start with, I think, for me.
So I think the other one as well, and this relates to the question that we're seeing here from Jasker and Singh, just to add on to what Elron and what you've said. So Alanga's minutes were lower even at the end of last season. Callum Hudson-Odoi finished the season on a high and looks sharp in pre-season. So I think at the moment we're in a situation where, as Ignatius adds, nailing like Hudson-Odoi versus Morgan Gibbs-White versus Alanga, that's going to be hard for Forest. So if you can get that right, one of those could be a great enabler for having something like Salah, Haaland, Isaac, Kai, as Jaskrin suggesting. So I just want to get those all in there at once and say that maybe a Forest midfielder.
Do we really want a Forest midfielder, Nima? Really? Is that what we've come to? No,
so I've got Kudus in that slot right now, right? So I'm comparing, I guess, Kudus to Forest. Yeah, it's one I'll have to wait and see, I think.
It feels a bit desperate for me, resorting to Nottingham Forest players. I like to have players from good teams.
That should have been one of my rules earlier. Good players from good teams. So Elron asks, any love for Edouard while Mateta is in Paris for the Olympics? Not for me. It's kind of, if Eze stays, I'm happy. Munoz, I'm keeping an eye on, looks exciting, but not really much else for me. This question from Black Screen. If you missed the start of the episode, I recommend at the end going back. We'll give a quick shout out to Gabe and Chris. Wish them well in their next chapter and as this era of Net That Haul comes to an end. On that note, thank you everyone who supported us so far. There's a few final questions I'm going to answer, but before that, I'm going to shout out all the haulers who are supporting the channel still today and who are planning to be here for the rebrand. So super haulers, we've got FPL Robbie, Greenback Golf, Harbour Boy, David Harrison, True Fandela. Thank you for everything. Haulers, we have Dread FPL, Podner, Blonde, FPL Teacher, Doni FPL, Tom Gorsuch, Devindra Raj, Lindsay, Akshay, Dom, Claire FPL, Tusks, Catherine, Harry Not Kane, Sebastian Koo. We've got Benjamin Lockwood. We've got FPL Rubber Ducky, Big Mike, FPL Planner, Grady, Jasper Singh, BW Splitter, the FPL Juice show, of course, as well. And I've redirected the end of this show when it ends back to their episode if you missed it earlier. Great watching as they explain what they're going to do this season and changes they've got. And Neil, Inshallah, Mo Salah. So thank you all the haulers on Patreon. We also have, last but not least, Elron, FPL California, Mike Burke, Draft Alchemy, Dr. Green Farm, Michael Rodriguez. Thank you all for your support. It is truly end of an era. We could not have won the Gold Award, I will say, without you all. And in answer to the question, Gabe will be announcing what he's doing soon. So he will be probably on X and he will also be rebranding and maybe doing some analysis in some other forms for football more so than FPL. He has deleted his FPL account. Mariner, as we know, he actually quit towards middle of last season. So we wish them well in their personal lives, their professional lives. We will all remain friends, so there are no rumors as well. There's been no falling out between any of us, of course. But when this channel began, it was born in lockdown. It was 2020. No one was allowed out. We had a lot more free time. And all three of us were in a different stage of our life. And all I can say is, I don't know how we managed to get 3 consecutive finals in our 3 full seasons of doing FPL with a 4th half season. I don't know how we did it, and it wouldn't have been possible without the haulers who all were here and voted for us. So I hope you follow us to the next chapter. What I will do with this channel, with the guests, and what I'll do on the new channel linked in this video. If you want to support that as well, that's brand new starting on the 13th of August. Do go follow that. But otherwise, please hit the like button on this video. Subscribe to see what we're going to rebrand as. Go check out Man on Pod as well, obviously. Craig just recorded earlier, and he's got a show on Fridays, he mentioned. So I'm excited. We're back, baby. It's been 70 days since the last video, as I mentioned. I feel good to be back. And thank you, everyone, for everything. But before we go, Craig, is there any final questions we should answer? I've started maybe 2. These are funny ones. So these are no more FPL ones because now we've had a heartfelt moment. So we're just going to do some comedy and then go. So Elron, will there be a dusty, unused exercise bike on your new channel? Funnily enough, there was one in that Nick video, and that's at least a few years old. You'll be glad to know the bike has finally been moved out of the way. It's still just as dusty. I am looking to do something else with that. Hopefully I can get it sold on to free up space. But yeah, watch this space. I'm hoping to change not just the graphics, but my setup to an extent. What else do we have? So Hassan Lort's question was, I said no more FPL. I'm sorry. So we don't think Havertz is being overlooked, because I definitely think a lot of people today seemed like they prefer him to all the other Arsenal attackers. So I would say that at the moment, he's getting quite a lot of attention. But another funny question from Elron before we go, where he said, did you get that shirt in the 1970s, Nima? So I don't know if he meant the one in the video with Nick, or if he means like the Arsenal Puma shirt. This one's the Alexis one. This is like pre-Adidas becoming a sponsor in the last 4 or 5 seasons. So if you meant the one in the video, then yeah, maybe, because I think back then I used to wear quite crazy, vibrant summer shirts, like those flowery shirts and crazy designs on Net That Haul. We used to go live at 11 p.m., guys, just going down nostalgia lane on a Monday night. It would be 6 a.m. on Tuesday for Mariner and 3 p.m. in West Coast America for Gabe. So back to round off, and before we go, it was crazy. We managed to keep this ship steering 3.5 seasons, and without further ado, it's on to the next chapter. This is the last episode of the Net That Haul branding, and I'm glad I could share this moment with you, Craig. I'm glad that Gabe was here in the chat. Thank you, everyone who tuned in and came to wish us well. And yeah, it looks like we've got Nick in trouble as well. The wife watched that and was not amused, so she's not amused by his reaction to Gray, or maybe to what my outfit was saying. I don't know which one. But to see us out, instead of just the music, I'm going to play another final video. And this one's not as long as the Nick one. This is 20 seconds. This was the first ever guest we had on Net That Haul. And I said to them, you can be the 5th crew member. They're top 5 or top 3 in the world. Tom Badges. They are one of the best FPL managers in the world over a long period of time in Scout and on all the websites. But let's just see this edit as we say goodbye to Net That Haul in this chapter. And let's just enjoy that moment when we can have a little self-deprecating humor. And we'll see you guys next week. I'll announce the guest, the new branding, the new name. And please support us in the next endeavors. Have a lovely week, everyone.
Definitely our most popular member of the Net That Haul crew. And you can definitely be our 5th crewmate now going forwards. Definitely be our 5th crewmate now going forwards.
Hello, darkness, my old
So, just while we're here.